Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, when the interviewee knows the business better than the business does. Standards exist for a reason, or don't step on my toes with that regex. Backup? We have a RAID, don't we? Every time power goes out, user gets disconnected from VPN unexpectedly. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. When the interviewee knows the business better than the business does. It's always useful to keep a finger on the job market pulse. I had an alert come up for a poster child company that had just gotten out of the garage startup phase and was making waves through an industry that I'm intimately familiar with. These guys had it all: captive market, really cool product, young and fresh ideas, deep pockets, free reign to build IT as I saw fit, and an awesome office with great views. It was really a bonus when I found out that their office was across the road from a coffee bun place. They are so delicious. The role itself was fairly senior and would be integral in defining company strategy and product direction. My personal experience would help them avoid many of the pitfalls of the industry, and my contacts would lubricate many of the challenges they would come up against as they commercialized their product, and they were actually desperate for someone who could do just that. All this from a head of IT. LOL. Yes, please, gimme. Called up the recruiter, and within about 15 minutes they were begging. First round interview, straight to the top. You know that feeling when you've gelled perfectly with the interviewers, there's total alignment, and you've got it in the bag. The only thing that made my eyebrows raise a bit was it looked like everyone was in their 20s. I rewarded myself with a coffee bun. Second round interview was a bit strange. There was probably about a dozen people in the panel from across the business. Engineering, marketing, product development, compliance, and half the C-suite. And it lasted about 3.5 hours. Lol, what? Once again, I'm the oldest person in the room by a significant margin. And this is where it actually fell apart. What became very apparent to me is that the company had no idea about the market they were playing in. Everybody was so focused on their own part of the puzzle that nobody had their eye on the bigger picture. In fact, they had no idea about the scale of the bigger picture. Including all the XOs in the room. The compliance activities that they thought would open the door to commercial opportunity in this industry was merely a gate check prior to being invited to talk to the real certification bodies. And they had no idea about the soul-crushing body of work that was just past what they thought the finish line was. Then I started to give them a rundown on things like defense clearances, reporting requirements, ETAR and EAR, the local regulatory regime, how to integrate nationality requirements within the bounds of employment law, the different standards bodies and their relative importance, change management, advanced persistent threat, ASD 8/NIST 800-171/ etc., the various government grants available, etc., etc. I already knew this job wasn't for me, but invested the time in trying to prepare them anyway, in the same way that a senior will help to teach a junior. I could see the XOs getting more uncomfortable each time I peeled another layer off the proverbial onion, while the engineers were faithfully taking notes. Probably saved them a bunch of consulting costs. On my way out, I got another rewarding coffee bun. Yum, smiley face. At the end of the day, I withdrew my application, and the recruiter let me know that they canned the position anyway. The budget was going to be spent on more compliance people instead. LOL. Remember, people interviews go both ways. Standards exist for a reason, or don't step on my toes with that regex. So, we run a variety of microservices inside a Docker stack. Rather than expose each microservice port to the outside world, we run Jinx exposed on port 443, and have it handle the routing. Now, the developers maintain the Jinx configuration for the stack. They add the location block parsing configuration, so that when a microservice request comes in from the Tomcat application in the web layer, that location block forces security token processing. This ensures that calls made to the microservice must come from an authenticated session in Tomcat, and that those calls are routed to the correct microservice. The architecture also allows microservice-to-microservice calls to stay inside Docker. If one microservice needs to make a call to another one, it doesn't need a token because it just makes the call directly, bypassing Jinx. This works pretty well, but relies on all of the developers following a standard convention on how to name the URLs for the microservices. For example, a user management service might be accessed with /user management service /client/, but would be called user management MS. Now, we maintain the infrastructure. When the developers are ready for a new microservice to go into the user testing environment, they give us a ticket. We put the microservice into the Docker Compose file and add it to a list of services that the deployment pipeline is going to process. We also add an alive check URL location block to a file that we manage. The deployment pipeline injects the contents of this file into the Jinx configuration. The URL follows a standard microservice name /alive. This is important because the alive check isn't just used by the monitoring service to let us know if a microservice has crashed, it's also used by the deployment pipeline. The pipeline runs through the list of microservices and generates a script which will Docker compose up each microservice, the run a curl against. If there's an issue, the deployment will bomb out. And that's where the idiot developers come in. You see, Jinx parses locations from top to bottom. The first match in the regex is the one it uses. The developers added a location for their microservice as /client operations /client /user management service, which adds the token processing and the rewrites the URI as $1, so the client name and proxy _ pass it to http://user-management-ms. Cool. This works. When a client logs into the application and goes to the user management portal, it sends those calls to the microservice for handling. The deployment works, and we're happy. Until today. So this morning, there's a test environment deployment. New guy is running it, and he tells me it's failing. Then he asks if I've ever seen a 401 error on an alive check. 401 is a problem with the security token, and should never happen on an alive check. I run the curl command from inside the microservice container, and it returns the correct I'm alive JSON data. I run it from inside the Jinx container, same thing. I run it from the Docker host and get a 401. That's when I start picking through the jinx.conf file. You see, I was the one who initially set up this microservice, and I know for a fact that it was working. And there, in the developer maintained section of the file, is a new location block. Sometime last week, development got a request to add this capability to the super secret internal management application that we use. Ignoring the conventions that exist for a goddamned reason, the developers added code to the web application that would make a call to /user management ms/client. Sometime yesterday, they added a location block to the Jinx config for /user management ms/. Which includes all of the necessary security token processing. The problem is that this part of the file is before our alive checks get injected. And /user management ms/alive matches this block first, Jinx checks for the security token and doesn't find it, and kicks out a 401 error. Which bombs the deployment. New guy submits an emergency change to remove the microservice from the list, and when it's rerun, the pipeline doesn't try to bring this one up, nor does it check to see if it's alive. I anticipate getting a ticket later today complaining that the microservice is no longer available, and can we please fix it? At which point we will happily tell development to fix the location block, so that it doesn't step on my alive check first. Backup? We have a RAID, don't we? A story from here a few days ago reminded me of a customer I had back in like 2008 or something like that. We were a rather new IT consulting company providing all the services for small and mid-size companies up to being a mid-size MSP later on. Kind of a success story actually. So I was talking to the customer about a new setup for their single on-site server. It was a Dell server with a physically installed domain controller, which also served as file server and print server IIRC. Backup was done on a tape which should get exchanged daily, but was forgotten about every second day or so the usual. I was consulting him to a new server machine and splitting up the functions a bit with virtualization, by which we could do the backup using snapshots stored on a NAS, something like that. We were still talking concepts. Of course, the customer figured out the newer setup would be more sophisticated, resulting in more $. He then got an idea about backups. Mr. Flores, I have a RAID, don't I? It's mirrored, isn't it? Me, yes, RAID 1, mirrored. Customer, speaking while moving in the direction of the server, so I can just take out one drive and put it somewhere safe, like taking it home. Note, server was just behind the next door small companies. While I was still thinking of a reply, I heard a beep 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 from the server. Customer returned smiling with a hard drive in his hand. I don't know what face I made in that moment, but it sure wasn't pleased. I tried pinging the server, nada. Took us an emergency act up into the night to rebuild the RAID properly. Actually, I don't know exactly why it crashed so hard, since in theory the customer was right. Of course, the idea was still a bad one. Every time power goes out, user gets disconnected from VPN unexpectedly. User called and says, I keep getting disconnected from VPN when I lose power. My power at my apartment keeps going out. My power is on now and I'm connected. Me, confused, okay. So what's the issue? User, it's weird. So every time my power to my apartment goes out, I get disconnected from VPN. But it's working fine now. Me, still not fully understanding the issue, because the power keeps going out, the router keeps going down. User, I didn't think I needed Wi-Fi. I was told that I would be able to connect to work from anywhere in the world using VPN. Me, finally understanding the issue. This man's lack of knowledge. Well, as long as you are connected to Wi-Fi, you can connect from anywhere in the world, meaning if you're traveling, you can connect to work using VPN from a hotel, airport, Starbucks, etc., but you still need a Wi-Fi connection. User, okay. Hangs up. I thought being connected to a network was just common sense at this point, especially for work, using applications/websites users familiar with by now. Sorry if it's lame, but these convos kinda amuse me. I always seem to overestimate people's knowledge.